My wife and I bought a 4-bedroom house in PA that my son lives in. Our son went to college in PA and wanted to stay in the area. So we bought the house as a second home. We live in NJ and commute into Manhattan for work. We figured that he would have a place to live and we could visit every so often and spend some quality time together. We pay the taxes and services back / maintenance on the house. Our son pays for his groceries and the house utilities. All was going well for a few years. Our son meets a girl and they get serious. We met her and she seems nice enough. They announce their engagement and she moves into the house with our son. Now for the problem, the wedding. We hold a little get-to-know-you barbecue at the PA house. My son and daughter are there, as are our son's fiancé and her parents. And sisters. We all seem to be getting along well. My wife, daughter and the fiancé go into the house along with her mother and sisters and my son. A few minutes later my wife and daughter come out and are really upset. They come over and tell me we're leaving and driving back to NJ. I try to find out what happened. Once we get back to NJ and they calm down, they tell me that our son and his fiancée along with her family don't want us at the wedding. According to what I was told, we're not their kind of people. I was livid. I called my son and asked him WTH this was about. He tells me that her family feel that we are not good enough and will embarrass them at a family wedding, and that we are all uninvited from the wedding. I let a week go by to calm myself down and drive back to the PA house. The new future in-laws are in the house along with the fiancé. It appears that they all moved into the house. They ask me why I'm there. I tell them that since we aren't invited to the wedding, I was coming over to talk to my son. They tell me to leave their house. I lost it and told them that they had 30 days to get out. Tell my son I'm selling the house and he could find somewhere else to live with all of you. I go to a realtor in town and list the house for sale. They call my son at work and tell him what I said. Apparently they thought that he owned the house. He calls me and asks why I'm selling his house. I tell him I paid for it along with the taxes on it and it is mine. He was living there rent-free, but since he doesn't want us in his new life, he has to get out. I tell him the same as I told his future in-laws. They have 30 days to get out, then I'll get a lawyer and get them evicted. Am I the for taking a hard stance on this? He is my son, but the in-laws seem to take over and we no longer count. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me, and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. My girlfriend, Rose, and I have been together for 4 years, and she is 5 months pregnant with our first child. My mom seemed to really like Rose, or at the very least tolerated her, but after we announced that we were expecting, something definitely switched in her. She has become extremely rude and disrespectful towards my girlfriend. She makes passive-aggressive comments at every chance she gets. I've had to take a step back from my mother until she fixes her behavior. Rose had gone to visit her family who lives far out of town. It was a very last-minute trip, and she drove herself to the destination and back. Unfortunately, at around 6 p.m., her car broke down and she was forced to pull over. Fortunately, my brother, Chris, who's great with cars and lives about an hour and 1/2 from where Rose was stranded, was willing to pick her up and sorted everything out. I was out of the country, so I'm grateful that my brother sorted everything out for her. Chris moved back in with my mom about a year ago. Obviously, the situation wasn't the best, especially considering the tension between Rose and my mom that exists for no particular reason. But I hoped my mom could put her pettiness aside for at least a night. It was too late for Chris to drive Rose back home, so my brother told her that he would drive her back tomorrow morning. An arrangement that my mom seems to not like, but one that she managed to keep her mouth shut about, my girlfriend tells me. Rose helps prepare dinner, wash up, and actually engage in a decent conversation with my mom for the first time in ages. However, they mostly avoid each other. Chris goes to bed earlier, leaving my mom and Rose. My mom lives in a 2-bedroom apartment, and since both bedrooms were taken, Rose assumed that she would be sleeping on the couch. She apparently assumed wrong. My mom gives Rose the thinnest blanket ever and basically screams at her, telling her that she has to sleep on the floor to not ruin her couch. She tells Rose to make do with the pillows on the couch and the blanket that provides zero warmth. Rose thought about protesting, but ultimately decided against it. According to Rose, my mom kept opening her door to check if she was sleeping on the couch, so she couldn't even try to sleep on the couch. At 5 a.m., Chris found Rose on the couch and let her sleep on his bed. He ended up telling me, but told me to not make a big fuss out of it. I did the exact opposite. I called my mom, very angry, and told her that she was disrespecting her so badly. She tried to defend herself by saying that she didn't harm the baby, and it's okay for pregnant women to sleep on the floor. But I refused to hear any of it. Chris agrees with me, but told me that I shouldn't make it a fight. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I am a 43 years old female, have been with my partner, he's 50, for 6 years now. We have been living together for 5 of them. We are not married and we do not plan to marry in the future. I have a son, he's 19, that is currently a high school senior. My partner has a daughter, she's 21, who is going to college. When I met my partner, I was a widow of 3 years. I am lucky enough to have a very lucrative business and some family money. Also, my late husband left a substantial estate, including the house we live in. The house is a family home, so it passed to my son as the only heir. My partner also makes good money and the difference in our lifestyles was pretty much negligible. But while I and my late husband made sure to not spoil our son, he was responsible for keeping his room clean. Even though we have a housekeeper, he had chores during the weekends. We taught him how to cook, his allowance is reasonable. He has to save for expensive purchases like a car, a PS5, etc. My current partner and his ex-wife spoil their daughter rotten. Due to an incident when we first moved in together, she demanded my son's bedroom since it was the second biggest. Got rejected since it was his home and she only spends the weekend. And after some family therapy, we agreed that she will be treated like a guest by me. She will have to follow the house rules, and that at the extent of our relationship. Now while she is spoiled, she is a good girl, academically excellent. Except for the aforementioned incident, very respectful and just a pleasant young woman. The problem is that I did not know the extent to which my partner spent money on her. He pays some money as rent that I put into my son's college fund, and we split the common bills in half. Everything else is our own responsibility, so we don't know much about each other's finances. Now my son is planning to do a tour of East Asia during the summer, and I was happy to give him the money to do so, as a gift for getting into a very prestigious college. When my stepdaughter heard about it, she asked her dad to pay for a tour of Europe, since he didn't send her on one after she got into college. He agreed because he never says no. But he came to me asking me to lend him close to $30,000 because he can't afford the trip on his own. I am not even giving that much to my son, and his plane tickets are more expensive. I refused. I said that since this wasn't an emergency, he can save and send her on the trip after she graduates college. Now he is not talking to me, saying that I am choosing favorites. I have no relationship with his daughter, so I don't know how that even is applicable. And that I am putting money over his happiness and relationship with his daughter. I can easily afford to lend him the full amount, I just don't want to, because his reasons are not convincing enough.